It is on YouTube now.
Oh, excellent. I honestly have no clue what happened. So, all right, I turned that off so that way I can just focus on here because there's going to be a delay. The difference with this is that you're just getting a little smidgen of things. We go much more in depth. If we're doing a workshop like we have this workshop coming up in a couple weeks, and I am there with you for you to paint along with me. And then if you want, we can look at it at the end. And then we talk about your water to color ratio, maybe some of the problems you might have had, what's working, what's not working for you. And then when we do the 6 week intensive, well, I don't know if it's really intensive, but it allows you time to work at your own pace. And then you get comments from me. And then we work on what's working, what's not working. Because most of the time when I look at students' work, what's happening is that they don't have the range of values. They may have light, medium, and dark, or they just basically have all medium and they don't have the depth. So I think it's just more in depth. So let's jump over here. And I think a lot of those questions will be answered. What's happening here, this is using some of the techniques right back here, doing a wet into wet application here as I wanted to bring the attention to the flower and then a sense of depth back here. Now, the original reference photo for this particular one was I liked this particular flower. I didn't like what was happening on this side or in the background. So what I did is I pieced together a composition that I liked. And then what I did is use the idea back here of looking up through different trees, but actually the background was all green and extremely boring. So it was like, how do I want to change it? And so that's what this whole composition is about. And this is what we're doing next week, starting for 6 weeks. You can also apply the ideas into your own paintings, but this is what we're working on along with another one, and it's very in depth. Okay, so this is a painting that I did, but I haven't completed it for this one. And what I wanted to do here was change the effect. So if I have it on light, I have like just a light kind of soft background. But if I wanted it to be dramatic, then I had it a bit more green, but still it might not have enough color. And if I want to go even more dramatic, I'm going to go darker, or I might do a little negative painting or lift areas out. And why I would do that is so this flower pulls forward and it draws the eye into the center of the flower. So if we look at something like this, you can see the shadows are obvious. We need shadows in here, but we also, if we're going to go darker, we need to go darker in our flower. This is the only landscape that I planned on showing you right now. And why I have this here is because the idea is pulling this forward, pushing that back. We had to work with values, going darker with the values, not overdoing the background because I could create clouds and all that back here. But what I really wanted to do is work with my shadows, and then that we have shadows back here, and then just that softer look in this area. When I originally did this one, what I was trying to do is paint everything that I saw. And I had all these little pieces back here, and I really liked it. And I also wanted it to be dramatic in the background, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. And I started traveling and teaching workshops. This was too difficult to do in a workshop because what would happen is people are always trying to figure out what does it belong to, and I never think about that. I'm always looking at shapes, and that's really basically it. So it doesn't matter if I know my subject or not, I'm looking at shapes, shadows, values. And then if I wanted to do the idea of maybe all that complicated background without all the little segmented pieces thing, and I wanted to change it to make it maybe a little more lighter, then I'm going to use with different colors up here and work with a wet into wet application in the background. So I love this piece, and it's more decorative, but it's not dramatic. And this doesn't really pull forward as much as it did in the other one. But if I want to use this technique, the wet into wet, and make it dramatic and simplify the painting, then it's going to look something like this. But then if I wanted to change the mood of the painting and then maybe put the greens back here, it's a little more lively and uplifting, and that's great. But then if I change it again, the same painting, and work with lights and a wet into wet application back here, and take advantage of the orange and the blue here, then it creates a much more livelier painting. Let's look at this one. Now we plan on doing this one next month. But what I really like about this is I had a different technique of how I wanted to get this background in here. And that's really nice. It creates just a different kind of feeling. There's no one way of doing it. Okay, so you can see there we have that smooth color. And what's nice about this is having the transitioning color from light down to dark. And why I'm showing you this one is because what I was fascinated with more than anything is that I wanted the light area and in the middle there. I wanted to pull the viewer into this. I wanted to create a journey. I really wasn't too interested about all of this because this is very tedious. I didn't enjoy that much. But again, working with the darker values and medium tones through here. So it really depends on what kind of journey do you want to take your viewer on. Going back to that idea in the very beginning, when I was talking about the type of flowers and whether or not you want to be light, medium, dark, bold, dramatic. See, we can see here, this is very light. This could work. It's very safe. It needs more mid-tone to darker values in here, but I stopped myself because I was trying to be lighter and a little more delicate, and that is not my tendency. But this was something that you might want to consider. It's an apple blossom. It's not really a dramatic painting. It's something that's delicate. So I was trying to be a little more delicate here. This one is something that's very complicated. And really what we have is a lot of wet into wet in the background, letting it dry, then doing negative painting. And then remember I showed you that one little piece of paper where I just glazed over an area, and by glazing over those areas, you're going to soften the edges. And by softening those edges, then the background doesn't compete with your subject. And then if you want to be bold and dramatic, now I don't have much of a background here, but really what I wanted to do is draw the viewer into the center here. And I could probably do a bit more work on this, but we're working again with your lighter to medium to darker values. What's also nice is if you take one subject or maybe a simple flower, just something that you can easily replicate and create a little thing like this with 6 squares, experiment with different colors in the background. That way you can see what works best, what's going to show your flower off a bit more or whatever object that you're working on, and what inspires you or feels good to you. And this is the same thing, same idea with a different subject. And what's nice is that you really get to play with colors. Okay, there is something called a Duralar wet media film like that. And you can lay it right over your painting. You can either print, you can take something like that and print it out on your printer there and just fill it in, or you can use an application and work with it. But if you have something like this and you really don't know what you want to do, you can go ahead, let's just try, say like, you can just go ahead and put a little color on top of it, paint right on top of your painting, whatever you want to do. So I just want to give you an option. I'm not doing anything fancy. And then you can get an idea what it might look like. And we go more in depth when we actually go into some classes about this. Okay, so we have a bamboo hockey brush. I know that's going to hold a lot of water. This is my wash mottler. This isn't going to hold as much water. So I think let's try both of these so you can see the difference. And if I want to control color, like, then I'll have to show it to you. I would use a synthetic. If I don't mind it bleeding a bit more, I might use a blend brush. So I'd be thinking about the type of brushes that I'm using too. So right now I'm going to take a number 14 blend brush. And what that means is that it has a combination of synthetic fiber and also natural hair. Let's see, what do I want to create? It doesn't really matter. Let's just get some color in here. I'm going to make a little puddle. like that. That has a lot of water in here. And if I want to control my color a bit more so it doesn't spread, then I'm going to have less water. You can see that doesn't really have a puddle here, not there. So actually, I'm going to take my wash modeler and I'm going to lay down some water. Now on the 140-pound paper, it's going to dry very quickly. If we're using 300-pound paper, I'll have more time to work with it. And I'm going to do a wet into wet application. This is wet. I'm going to go ahead and put some color right in here, move it around. I like to retain a highlight because I'm thinking that could be clouds. It could be whatever I want it to be. And if I want to give the illusion of maybe some flowers in the background, then I'm going to just drop in a little color like that and move that around so it can mingle. And then I might also, because there's a lot of water there, I might take a 30 and then maybe remove some of the extra water. Okay, so I'm trying to imagine this as a background with some flowers in there. Maybe I want to create some leaves or something. If I want leaves or grasses, if you look at the water to color ratio there, I'm thinking I want this to have less water. I think I'll add a little yellow into that. And because I don't want to fill in the whole piece of paper. These are just little exercises here. And maybe this is drying over here. Let's create a little leaf. Now I'm looking at this and seeing how it's not spreading so much. So that means I really don't have a lot of water in my water to color ratio, and that's okay. But if I want it to spread more, then I'm going to add more water into this. Let's take a look. And that can take off on me, and then I won't have any control over this. So these are things I might be thinking about. Let's move that around. So right now, that's just creating a foundation. Wipe this out. I might not want that. If I don't want that, then I'm going to use number 30, and I might lift. Let's say I want branches over here. I'll take my synthetic brush. I know it's probably looking like, what in the world is she doing here? It doesn't look like anything. I'm thinking about my water to color ratio. Okay, puddle down here, less water up here. I'm going to create a branch. Okay, let's say I create a branch like this. We're just touching on a few things today. I want to try to keep my brush strokes to a minimum. And I'm really just playing with the color. I'm not trying to really do anything too fancy, or I'm also holding the brush higher up the handle. Okay, let's say you're doing something like this and everything is just feathering out. You're going to go ahead and lift your paper like that to soften the edges, or you're going to take the number 30. Okay, I don't want to add more water into this. I just want to soften that edge. I'm just going to go along that edge a little bit like this and soften. Using the same idea. Okay, let's say this is dry paper and I'm coming in. I'm going to go like that. We're going to have stronger color. And this is not ideal. I just want you to see the difference. This is more forgiving. This is, in my opinion, I think this is more challenging. Okay, and let's say I want to add a little green over on this side, like we did up here. You're going to have stronger color, like I said. How do we show this without the whole course? You know, they need time to practice these things. Okay, same idea. Okay, maybe I'll add a little bit of pink down here. What's good about this, it helps you play with the water to color ratio and uh, what kind of effect you want to create. Okay, if you notice, I'm going like this and rotating my brush a little bit so I don't release more water. But let's say I like that light there, but I want more color here or here. Or maybe I want a bit more green on this side. Then I'm selectively going to soften my edges. I'm going to take my 30 or a 20, remove the extra water, and I'm going to soften that edge. Maybe soften that edge. Really depends what you want. Because I don't want the hard lines. I want that softer look in the background. Let's look at how this applies. This idea right there. And I could add, let's see if I want a branch in here. I don't want my branch to overwhelm it. So I'm going to take a synthetic brush and I'd like it to be a little toned down. I don't want it to be so, just want it to be darker, but not so brown. I'm going to think about the amount of water on the surface. Okay, can you see that that's wetter on that side? It's a little drier there. And I'm going to use that idea. I already have this little stroke through there, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. And if that has a dry edge right there, so I don't want a whole background full of these dry edges. I want it to be soft. That's crawling. I may not want it crawling, so I'm going to go ahead, take that 30, and I'm going to soften. And I'll soften. Now we could always use salt and all those fun things. There's all of that. What I'm going to do up here is the wet into wet application. I can do it in this area. Everything else has more detail, which I don't think we need to do. So I'm going to think about how much water do I want in this area or feeling to it. Let's get some water in here. I'm going to use the same idea that I just did. I'm going to bring the water almost up to the edge of the pencil line. I like to leave an area for a highlight. I'm thinking about how much blue do I want to add in there. If I use a 20, I could flood it with too much water and color. And I want to retain that highlight. So, but I am going to use the 20. I'm going to go right along the pencil line, right through here. Bring that up into the water that I applied. Let's add a little color over here and maybe a little bit over here. Then I'll use my number 30, remove the extra water. I'm going to soften the edge. Bring it right up to the edge of that pencil line. To take advantage of the water on the surface. Let's look at that. It's not moving. I need to get a bit more water in here so it can be a bit more forgiving. I'm going to drop it in. Now I'm looking at the amount of water on the surface. This is a lot of water. I'd like it to have some darker areas over here, but I don't want that to bleed over into everything. So I'm thinking about the amount of water that's here. Now, if you're wondering about those hard lines that you get around objects, if you notice this, by lifting it, all that water and color is accumulating right along here. If I left it like that, I could have that crusty edge, which I don't want. I just know a lot of you have that, so that's something to think about. Paying attention to the amount of water on the surface. I'm going to take my indigo, bring it into my green over here. I want a darker value. Let's go over here. I'm paying attention to how wet the surface is. If it's too dry, I'm not going to be able to do this. If it's too wet, it's going to take off on me. And remember how I added that little branch with that little brush stroke? Maybe I'll use the green. Let's move that around. I'm thinking, do I want that to be a little bit bigger? Could be. Let's go ahead and put a lighter green right through here. I should make it maybe a little bit bigger. I feel I'm being a little timid with that, which I don't want to be. All right, I'm going to go darker here. I'm going to take a little indigo, bring this over here. I'm going to go back into my greens. I want more contrast. And let's see, I think, what do I want to do? I want this to stand out a bit more, going darker with my values. Maybe I want more over here. And maybe over here. If I was taking my time, I would be more thoughtful with it. Let's move this around. And then we can always pull out things with little circles or light, lift it around, bring the color up to the edge. Clean that up. And I want to work with soft edges. So it's that idea. And you can also see by adding that, then that really works with the shadow here. I think, so the idea would be, I want to go here and here and here, but then we're developing the whole painting. Like that. But it's that idea. I'm curious. I'm going to show you something else. Okay, so like we have a giant space here. How am I going to handle this? I can either work little pieces at a time, or I think what I'm going to do is just get water, go right over this. I'm thinking about what brush do I want to use. I'm going to use my Hake brush. I don't really want to release a lot of water, but I want enough water on here. I want to try to pull out more of those stems. I'm going to use the number 16 synthetic, I think. I'm going to use the color that I already have in the palette. This needs to be more developed. And maybe what I would do is go right along. I'm looking at what's already here. Well, we can go for questions. Do you want to ask some questions while I'm doing this and then I can address them?
Me?
Yeah, do you see anything that I should talk about, or I'll just go ahead and look at them? What do you think?
What is your deep dark green that you are using?
Okay, that's a good question. Deep dark green can be using a indigo with a permanent sap green is usually my go-to there. And you can also, one that I like is a perylene green. And looking at this, what I like is going a little darker here. It's starting to balance the painting out a bit more. This is a little flat. This has more indigo and colors in here. And I don't want to go too dark on this side, but I do need darks in here. So let's think about that question. Okay, I'm going to bring more water into the palette. I'm going to take, I didn't use this color for this painting, but I'm going to use it now. It's a perylene green. I'll bring a little indigo into that and a little burnt sienna. Let's take a look. I like how this is light and having some darks and over here, but this disappears. So this is semi-damp. Let's see if you can see it. It's actually pretty dry right there. I'm going to go, let's break this up. See, this is what it's going to look like wet on dry without anything being softened. Then I'm going to take my 30, and you can see how distracting that can be. Remove some of the extra water. Soften. I don't want to just go from here to here, or I'm bringing too much water into that. I'm going to soften. And I don't know if I like that green as much right here.
Okay, Birgit, I see you're using your really big natural brush right now. And the question on the table now is how do you choose which brush or what kind of brush you want to use?
how much water you need the brush to hold and also the size area that you're working on.
Okay, thank you.
See, I don't like that right there. And I don't have permanent alizarin crimson in my palette, so I'm going to grab some of my reds and I'm going to try to tone this down a little bit. Allow those two complementary colors to mingle. And just move it around. I do like that I went a little darker there and here. I think that's kind of okay. We're going to see what happens once that dries. This is looking okay. If I think it could have more darks like we have down here, let's say I really didn't like something, I could use my magic eraser again, or I could even use some tape or a template. Let's go ahead, or the negative painting. Now, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to try it. Let's say if I took a piece of tape, let's say I want to reserve that. This is wet, so it's not ideal at all. I'm just going to lift a little bit out. It gets a little cleaner there. And it's not going to be too hard or too harsh. And you can always mangle your tape and lift out color, you know, so it's just a lot of the same things over and over again. I do like that line. I like the combination of the soft and that harder line there. So it's just more and more repetition. So let's take a look at some of those questions. So let's say I get some color right in here. Then I'm going to take the 30 or the 20. Okay, I'm going to remove. Did you see I didn't squeeze it out? I went like this, remove some of the water, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to press a little harder, not too hard, just hard enough that it softens that edge, but it doesn't release anything.
And you do that because you want to give it a place to go so that it doesn't create a hard line, right?
Right. But then if it's taking off on you, then you're still going to go ahead and you're going to press a little harder, depending on how far you want it to go.
Right.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and soften that line. Notice how I'm also twisting my brush. So now we have a soft line like that. And then if we had it just on dry paper, you can see the difference. Like that. That is crisp. This is soft. That'll recede. This will pull forward. Let me show you what happens if you have too much water. If you don't wring it out, it'll continue to spread and it's going to bloom. Hopefully you can see that. Here, I didn't even remove any of that water, so we're going to see what happens. This is not ideal. See, the color is moving out to the edge, and then you'll probably go like this. And what can happen is it's going to feather, the water up here is going to pull down into that area. Okay, other question?
Mr. Clean, what is it? What do you use it for? Can you paint over it once you use it?
Yes. It's a magic eraser like this, the original one. And you can tear it apart in little pieces like that. This is how you can easily get back a lot of your whites. So if we have something like this, okay, going to get that wet. You can either go directly on the paper like this. Let's see, let's find a spot that we want to lift out. We don't need to scrub too hard. Or you can go ahead, use a brush like this, get that wet, dampen it so that surface is going to lift easier. And depending on what you want to do. But remember last week we did this. Let's see if I have this template right here. I want to get back that highlight. I'm going to use that magic eraser. Okay, I'm going to decide where I want my highlight. This is just one way of doing it. Then I'll go ahead and lift that out. Now I have my highlight back. And another way of lifting the highlight out is actually using an art gum eraser. But gosh, I can go on and on. Thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to painting with you again soon. Take care, and thank you for all the lovely hearts and all of that. I so appreciate that. It's just fabulous watching that.